people have this view of I've encountered this where people are like, I don't want to study Zen because it's all militaristic and hierarchical, and I don't want to get involved in that. And that's specifically a criticism against monastic Zen. So do you have any experience of it being militaristic and hierarchical and all
It
of that?
is. It is both of those things. Well, I don't know about military. It's mili- I don't know what that means, but yeah, I mean it's very hierarchical, and like in the monastery, there's a row of where you put your shoes, and you have an order. It's called Junban, which is, I'm sure, a word you know. It just means order.
Yeah.
So you always know your place in the Junban. It's determined by when you entered into the monastery. So, um, the shoes, you know, to put you have a place, and you always put your shoe like below the person who's above you and above the person who's below you, and it's always the same. It doesn't change.
Hmm.
So, um, there's that, and then that's all throughout the day. There's stuff like that's how you line up for morning service, and it's how you sit, and that's arguably culture too. Although Dogen does talk about that um, a lot about.
Well, he talks about respecting your elder monks and
Yeah.
saluting them and all that stuff.
Yeah, and he talks about ordination age. I believe he talks about ordination. And when he went to China, he made this whole huge kerfuffle because they weren't respecting his ordination age, and he like petitioned the emperor to get his status recognized. So that's not something that's alien to Dogen.
Hmm.
That's part of the tradition he made, arguably, I would say. Um, and
Interesting.
I'm not going to say like good or bad because I'm just not going to say that, but it's there, and it's really hard. Yeah, I mean, I'm American, and I'm a feminist, and I don't like hierarchy. I don't like yeah, I don't like it.
Hmm.
But so it's an interesting thing to work with. I mean, the question that keeps coming up for me is like, okay, in a religion, you're gonna have to do stuff you don't like and you don't want to do. So are you gonna choose to do the things you don't want to do? Like, how do you relate to stuff you don't want to do? That's how I chose to deal with it. Like,
Interesting.
what does it mean? I mean, it's just my shoes. You know, I'm just putting my shoes in a place.
Yeah.
Like, it doesn't have to be fraught with pain and suffering.
No, I see. I understand that. I think that part of it would be really hard for me because it's always been I've always had a specific problem with that. But I can also see the value of practicing with it because I don't know, I came to Japan is in general a very hierarchical society, much more so than the US in every aspect, So as a working person in a company, I had to be
Yeah.
aware of the company hierarchy. It wasn't quite as strict as putting your shoes in the proper place, but there was a lot of stuff that as an American never comes up, about addressing people in a certain language and all of that. Um, and
Right. That's built into the Japanese language is the hierarchy of it. They have to change the verb. Yeah.
yeah,
Depend.
yeah, yeah. I told you about the time I got in trouble for using the wrong pronoun when referring to somebody who wasn't even in the room. Um, because he was of a higher rank than me, you
Mm-hmm.
know. And I wasn't even speaking to the person face to face, It was just because I had referred to him with the wrong
Hmm.
pronoun that my boss got really upset. So that happens. But I don't know, maybe you can tell me if I'm right or wrong. I felt like in Japan there's an understanding that hierarchies have their place, but there's also an understanding that they're never really permanent. That you are in this position for now in this situation, but that doesn't mean you're always there. For example, if you're the CEO of the company, within the company you have a certain rank, but then you go home and you have a different kind of rank at home, and it's very sort of fluid, which which was a way for me to sort of go, okay, well, I can deal with it if it's like that. I don't know where I'm going with this, but the idea of like you'd mentioned something at Tassajara specifically to the bowing practice, like when you meet somebody on the path at Tassajara who is a fellow student, you're supposed to bow to them, and it becomes very weird because people aren't necessarily wearing robes, so you don't know who's the guests and who's the students. You just have to recognize them by face. But you'd said to me that in Japan you wouldn't do that. You would only bow to people who are of a higher rank. You wouldn't.
What I that's true, but what I thought I said was that it's a more natural thing. It's not a rule. It's just being polite. So I mean, bowing in Japan is a greeting.
Yeah.
Like, you would bow as a greeting, but you would only. But like sometimes, like if I see my friend, I might not necessarily bow. I guess that's what I was getting at. It's not that I would only bow for people who are seniors, but I would definitely bow for people who are senior. But if I saw my friend, I might bow and I might not bow. And yeah. So
what? How do you accept authority? I mean, I'm very. I when Hardcore Zen came out, they made a bumper sticker. I don't know how many of them actually were circulated, but they said something like "question authority, question reality," and I'd kind of felt like that was one of the lessons imparted to me in the Zen, was this idea of and it's in there in Buddha's original words. You don't just accept something based because it comes from authority. That's in the Kalama Sutra, the famous Kalama Sutra, where he says don't accept things just because the person who said it is an authority figure. So how do you reconcile that with the demands of monastic life to actually follow authority?
I haven't been the best person about this, like, in the past, because I don't like rules, and even though I have a little bit more figured out, which is that, when you enter a monastery, it's your choice. It's always your choice. So things get tricky for me when I feel like I don't have a choice. And so, like, Ayama Roshi, the abbess of where I was, always would remind me whenever I would go to her with some problem that this is all my choice. Like, she's like, well, you chose this. You're choosing it right now. I'm like, fuck. You're right. Because then there's no way to argue about that. But the other so if I'm choosing this, and I'm choosing to study with someone, or I'm choosing to practice in a monastery, then everything becomes a kind of exercise, a kind of it's all within a container, and so it's almost like game's the wrong word, but it's like, I think of it. Have you read the book Ender's Game? No, you haven't.
No.
But I feel like sometimes in the monastery there are things that manifest, like challenges that have just been created by the monastery for me to deal with. And you don't like the term what is it? What is the buzzword? Practice
opportunity. That's what they call it at San Francisco, yeah. Everything's a damn practice opportunity.
It's all a practice opportunity.
Yeah, anything you don't like is a practice opportunity.
Well, yeah.
The toilet's overflowing. Well, that's a practice opportunity.
But like, people in authority, what I'm getting to now is that, everybody's a human, and all of my teachers in Japan, they're all people, and they all get angry, and they all, eat too much food, or like play favorites, or they all do that. And so how to study with them and do the necessary, Japanese, like, deferential, super polite stuff while still maintaining my integrity, it's very difficult, but I think it's possible if I know that it's my choice and that I'm choosing this experience because I can't get it anywhere else. Because I can't. I just can't do the same kind of training in America. So I sign up for this, and I do it completely for this temporary time. That's what I tell myself.